Shut up and sit down.
You are listening to The Wise Conservative Show. My name is Dakota Wise. Today I want to talk about something that a lot of the left has really begun to ignore, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. Of course, I'm talking about just how idiotic a lot of the liberals' ideas have become and how out of touch with reality they really have gotten. They just don't seem to use common sense anymore. Take, for example, they seem to trust and believe in the government more than any other group in the nation. They really seem to rather enjoy the government being involved in their everyday lives. They must enjoy it for the simple fact that they want to expand government so much bigger than it is today. We already have a government that is involved in everyday aspects of life, but if liberals had their way, they would expand this government even further. And honestly, I can't see where they get the sense that that's actually a good idea and that that's not just going to cause more problems than it solves. You can look at government today and you can see that it wastes money. You can look and see that it's inefficient. You can look and see that it's oftentimes better done by private citizens or by private corporations. And yet the liberal left would love nothing more than to see more and more government involved in everyone's lives. So it's just kind of astounding to me, and so that's going to be what we talk about today. I believe no one really sums it up better than Ronald Reagan did in his first inaugural address. So let me go ahead and play that clip right now.
In this, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people.
Those things that were stated way back in 1981 in Ronald Reagan's address, they still hold true. That's almost 3 decades later, over 3 decades later, and the same issues he was talking about, the same problems, they're still coming up today, and the liberal left would still love nothing more to expand the government. But government is not the solution. Government creates more problems in everyday life than they actually solve. That brings into the question as to what the role of the government should actually be and what the role of the government was actually intended to be. When the country was first founded, the founding fathers had absolutely no clue just how big our government was actually going to get. It's likely that they would not want the government to have gotten as big as it has gotten. You have to remember that they were escaping from an oppressive government, a government that was reaching into everyday life, that had its hand in everything, an overbearing government. So what they established was essentially supposed to be hands off. The government was supposed to be there when you needed it. It was supposed to keep the citizens safe. It was supposed to keep law and order in the land. But it was not supposed to have an impact on everyday life and have a significant role in the average citizen's life. Yet today, government has its hands in everything. The government has overstepped what it was supposed to do. They've created agencies that they have no business in creating, and they have a significant role in modern society that was never envisioned or intended to be had by the government, by the founding fathers. Over the generations, the government has expanded to keep pace with society. That's true. Today's society is significantly different than the society that the founding fathers grew up in and lived in. But in most cases, the government has over expanded, and they've actually grown to the point where it went further and beyond what society actually required. Take, for example, in 2009, there was an audit of the federal agencies examining all federal programs and found that 22% of them were costing taxpayers a total of $123 billion annually, and yet served absolutely no service and had no positive impact on taxpayers. 22% of the federal agencies had no significant positive impact on those who were funding them. So if you do the math, there's 456 federal agencies. 456. So at 22% of them having no impact on taxpayers, that equates to exactly 100 federal agencies that serve no actual service to the American people. And yet we continue to fund these agencies. We continue to tax the American people in order to provide these federal agencies with the money they require to operate, when those paying for them and those being taxed in order to provide the money for these agencies actually get no benefit from them whatsoever. We have 100 agencies with no positive impact, and yet the liberal left would want to expand the government even further. Yet we don't have the money for the 456 agencies we have now, and we definitely don't have the money for the proposed plans that any of the Democratic candidates have proposed. It's as simple as that. If you don't have money for something, you definitely can't buy it. And in this case, if we don't have the money for something, we definitely can't start new social programs and hope that the money is going to appear out of somewhere, or hope that our proposed taxes would actually cover the costs. So Bernie Sanders' plan, according to the Wall Street Journal, Bernie Sanders' plan for healthcare, for free education, higher education, would end up costing the government $18 trillion in new debt over the course of 10 years. Let's put that into perspective. Right now we have a national debt of $18.9 trillion. If Bernie Sanders were elected president, he would more than double our national debt in the course of just 1 decade. Now, American families are forced to live off the money they have. They're forced to live within their means. Yet our government, that is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, is not forced to live in the reality that everyday Americans are forced to live with. The government continues to borrow money. The government continues to put off paying off our debt. And it's going to implode at some point. Our economy cannot keep growing when our national debt continues to grow and our national debt continues to reach points of no return. It's going to get to the point where it would be nearly impossible to pay back our debt. And quite frankly, it's horrific that the younger generation, my generation, don't seem to care that the national debt is growing, and they support presidential candidates who would double the national debt. More than likely, it is going to be our generation that has to deal with the debt. It is going to be our generation or our children's generation who have to deal with the United States government going bankrupt, because that's where we are heading. And yet the liberal left continues to want to expand social programs at a rate that we cannot afford. It would be great in a perfect world if we could offer everything for free, but that's not the reality we live in. That is not the world we live in. And if you wanted that you would end up having to pay, like a lot of the European countries, which end up paying 60-70% of their income in taxes. That's what it would require here in the US if you really wanted all these social programs. You would be giving 60%, 70% of your income to the government. And Bernie Sanders approves plans like that. Bernie Sanders has stated he could get behind a 90% tax on income. You would essentially be working for the government at that point, because they would be offering so much services that are not necessary and entirely expensive. Now, I have a clip in which Bernie Sanders talks about the middle class, so I'm going to go ahead and play that.
This is what we are working on right now. We're going to end the loophole that allows large corporations to stash their money in the Cayman Islands and in some cases avoid pay all federal income taxes. We are going to raise the estate tax so that Trump and his billionaire friends and their families will end up paying more in taxes. We are going to have a tax on Wall Street speculation. Trillions of dollars have flowed from the middle class to the top 1%. And we have got to address the fact that the middle class in this country is disappearing. They need help. We have massive wealth and income inequality. The wealthy are going to have.
I can't even comprehend the idiocracy behind the man who would say statements like that. He honestly believes that the middle class wants these social programs and wants all of his proposed changes. But the reality of it is that Bernie Sanders does not actually help the middle class in any way whatsoever. Bernie Sanders' plans would end up killing the middle class. The middle class are always the class that are hit by taxes, closing loopholes, taxing the rich. That only goes so far. None of that would be sufficient in order to actually fund the $18 trillion worth of social programs that Bernie Sanders wants to create. So who then would the taxes fall on? It would fall on the middle class citizen who does not want, who does not need 95% of the programs that Bernie Sanders has proposed. And yet, he really believes that this is a middle class, he's benefiting the middle class by spending ridiculous amounts of money, and that's just not how it works. The middle class is not going to be helped whatsoever by Bernie Sanders. What would hurt the middle class is when the United States economy is in shambles, because we cannot continue to spend the money at the rate or increased rates of what we are spending right now. That would hurt the middle class. I'll tell you what else. At some point, somebody is going to have to pay this debt. And it's going to be the middle class who ends up paying most of it, because that's what makes up most of society, is the middle class. So Bernie Sanders' programs provide absolutely no benefit to the middle class. It's absolutely horrific that he's going to talk about helping the middle class. He's going to talk about helping the average American, because that is just simply not what is going to happen under his proposed plans. And it brings into question, where is Bernie Sanders getting all of his support? Where is he finding all of these people to actually go to his rallies to support him? Because he's rising in the polls, and it seems like none of his proposed policies are sound economically, are sound socially. So where is Bernie Sanders getting his support? I'll tell you, Bernie Sanders is relying on the young people. He's relying on young adults, and particularly he's relying on college students at this point. And Bernie Sanders continues to make false promises of things like free education. And I can tell you from personal experience of being on a college campus, that gets a lot of people excited, and that gets a lot of people willing to vote for him, regardless of how how actually feasible his policies are, and regardless of whether or not he would actually benefit the nation. This generation is very well known as the entitled generation. They believe that everything should be given to them. And who can really blame them? They've grown up in this welfare state where the federal government is pretty much giving out free handouts to anyone and everyone, and they've grown up in this state. So no wonder they've been indoctrinated with this welfare state, and they feel entitled. They feel the federal government should be giving them everything without them having to work. That's who's supporting Bernie Sanders. That's why Bernie Sanders has so much support. He has the young people who want to receive things for free without having to work for them. And that is actually what Bernie Sanders stands for. And what they don't seem to realize is that nothing, absolutely nothing, comes for free. Nothing. In addition, though, it's not just that the liberal candidates want to bankrupt the United States. They want to send our economy into shambles. They don't seem to care a whole lot about protecting our constitutional rights and our our civil liberties. So, watching the Democratic debate, that was a painful experience. I talked a bit about it in my video on gun control. But I want to expand on something because it really highlights just how idiotic the liberal left has become. So, something that got me really pissed off during the Democratic debate was when Bernie Sanders was clearly proud of the fact that he had a D- from the NRA. He said it like it was a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and play the clip of that. Listen in.
Let's start with one of them, the issue of guns. Senator Sanders, last week Secretary Clinton called you, quote, a pretty reliable vote for the gun lobby. Right before the debate, you changed your position on immunity from lawsuits for gun manufacturers. Can you tell us why?
Well, I think Secretary Clinton knows that what she says is very disingenuous. I have a D- voting record from the NRA.
A D- rating from the NRA. And he says it like it's a good thing, like he's proud of it. The NRA exists to protect our civil liberties, our Second Amendment rights, from those who would wish to destroy them, from people like Bernie Sanders, a left-wing nut who would love nothing more than to destroy one of our fundamental rights that were given to us by the founding fathers. And he's proud of the fact that he has a D- rating in protecting the Constitution. This just shows the sad state that the Democratic Party is actually in. They're having a contest over which one of them is worse at protecting the Constitution, is worse at protecting our civil liberties, and is worse at actually upholding the Constitution that they are pledging that they're running for president to protect. That is the sad state the Democratic Party is in. I'm not going to go full into gun control right now, as I have another video I made just really recently over the topic. But as it stands, the Liberal Party, the Democrats, they continue to push these fake issues. They continue to push these things like gun control that actually are going to have no effect on the American people, instead of actually focusing on real issues. Take, for instance, Bernie Sanders' stance on global warming. This is just another one of his focusing in on an issue that plays absolutely no role for the average American. Bernie Sanders actually believes that climate change is a bigger threat to the United States than terrorism. And not only did he just say that once, he has reestablished the fact that he believes global warming is a bigger threat than terrorism.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and take a listen.
In fact, climate change is directly related to the growth of terrorism. And if we do not get our act together and listen to what the scientists say, you're going to see countries all over the world. This is what the CIA says.
Let's go ahead and actually consider what Bernie Sanders is saying. He's saying that terrorism is a direct result to global warming. Yet, that's utterly and completely moronic. ISIS is not around because they felt their desert was getting a little bit hotter. ISIS is not trying to save the world from a watery ending through global warming. ISIS probably doesn't even know or care that global warming is supposedly happening. Yet Bernie Sanders, a presidential candidate, is going to get on stage and talk about global warming not only being the biggest threat to the United States, but talk about how global warming is the reason that ISIS exists today, has killed Americans, and killed innocent people all around the world. And this man is running for president. The actual degree to which global warming is happening is still debatable today. NASA itself, this last November 2015, issued a report that found Antarctic ice is actually expanding at a rate faster than glaciers are melting. So, in reality, glaciers might be melting, but Antarctic ice is expanding faster than ever and actually making up for the melted water that is coming off of these glaciers. The ocean is not rising, it's a redistribution of water. Seeing as Bernie Sanders wants to redistribute wealth, you think he would understand what redistribution of water was. And yet he continues to go on stage and pretend that global warming is the biggest threat to the United States and ignore the fact that ISIS has vowed and pledged to kill innocent American citizens. And he wants to be commander-in-chief. Global warming does not have bombs. Global warming does not carry guns. Global warming has not vowed to kill Americans at every chance it has. And even if global warming exists, right now it cannot be the number one issue that a potential president is talking about because it does not pose an imminent threat to the safety of American citizens. At worst, global warming might affect our children's children's children. It'll be well over several centuries before if the global warming plays any significant role in the world, even if it does exist, which is still debatable. But what's not debatable is the fact that ISIS is killing innocent people, not just in the United States, but around the world. And what's not debatable is the fact that ISIS has continued to grow under the leadership of the President Obama administration. At least Obama is willing to admit that ISIS is a threat, no matter how much he might dismiss them. Bernie Sanders is still saying that global warming is the threat we need to be worrying about. And this just perfectly demonstrates how out of touch with reality these Democratic candidates actually are. All of them live in this fantasy world where we have unlimited money, where non-issues are what we need to be talking about, and where they can do whatever they want and ignore constitutional rights. Yet, this is the sad reality we live in which that is actually how the Democratic Party operates. That is 100% the sad reality we live in. And unfortunately, guys, it is time to put an end to this rendition of the Wise Conservative Show. My name is Dakota Wise, and I've been happy to be your host today. We want to know what you think. Does the Democratic Party actually have any common sense, or are they just completely making things up as they go? As always, guys, if you've enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe to our RSS feed or our podcast. We have episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. And with that being said, my name is Dakota Wise. I'd like to thank you once again for listening in, and I am signing off.